committee meeting for the infrastructure group. Peter Ensel would normally chair this, but he's still recuperating a little bit, and we haven't officially appointed Councillor McFarland to the committee yet, so I guess it's just me. Usually I play more of a supporting rather than a central role to this, but I'll try and run the meeting tonight. Now let's begin with roll call, please.
Mayor Reid.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Here.
Councillor Dowdle.
Here.
Councillor McFarland.
Here.
Councillor Kretzer.
Here.
Mike Brody.
Here.
Mike Bissett.
Here.
Andrew Duran.
Here.
Adam Frazier.
Here.
Dave Powell.
Here.
Chris Gushlock.
Here.
John Rupp.
Here.
Bill Todd.
Here.
I'd like to begin the meeting with any individuals who would like to come and address the council. This is an opportunity for the public to please let us know any concerns you have related to infrastructure. We will have another public comment period or two during the actual council 30 as well. And you can receive an agenda for the infrastructure meeting just outside the door there. Anybody? Okay, let's go on to reports from department representatives and discussion with councilors. Any department head like to come forward? Seeing none, we have a few action items tonight. One is an agenda item, requests that the mayor is authorized to sign a license agreement with Pine Harbor, Inc. to enter City of Plattsburgh property located on Ohio Avenue and Nevada Oval adjacent to the property owned by Pine Harbor, Inc. to remove shrub brush, intermittently clear young poplars, and raise the canopy of mature trees located in the property paralleling that of Pine Harbor, Inc. thereafter or hereafter tree line work. The intent is to create window views of the lake while avoiding clear cutting and also avoiding removing any trees which may cause erosion of the lake shore area, banks, and or impact the structural integrity of the rail lines. And I believe there's somebody. Please come and speak to this. Would you like to say anything on this and have a discussion with the councilors? They will then be subsequently recommending this to go to the council meeting at 5:30 and then approved at that time.
Just like to say a couple of words. It's basically a continuation of what Lake Forest has already started. We're just going to do a continuation along the lake. Not only does it provide a great view for our residents, I'll give you an example. We just recently had a resident who was on hospice services who passed away, and her window actually overlooked the lake, and it was a very peaceful, calming transition for her to pass away, and not to mention other residents who enjoy the lake view. The other benefit for the city is also along the bike path of on the lake, so that would clear that for people who utilize the bike path along the lake for the view, as also with the railway, so they can see the lake. So it would open all that up. So it has many, many benefits to cutting those trees.
Good.
And I'm just here to answer any questions if anybody has questions.
It's a decade in the making, you said?
10 years. 10 years.
Now is Lake Forest already finished with
No.
theirs and you're just moving along?
No,
or you're gonna...
they're actually, they did one project and they're going to continue. I think theirs was last week. They got on the agenda last week and got theirs approved. So they're going to continue on with another section. And then we're continuing from where they leave off in front of our building. So,
It's exciting.
very exciting.
Are there any concerns from any of the department heads? I think our engineer.
Who's monitoring tree selection to verify lack of erosion?
We contracted with James Carter Logging. He did the other ones as well.
Professional though monitoring.
Oh, absolutely.
coastal stabilization.
Absolutely. Plus, we also are employing a flagman for CP rail, which is a requirement. So, yes, absolutely.
And Jim's providing insurance information.
Yes. Okay.
Any other additional DPW concerns? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank you. We have another item, a request that the mayor is authorized to sign the grant disbursement agreement between Dormitory Authority, State of New York, and the City of Plattsburgh for a grant of $300,000 for the restoration of the windows in the historic city building. I think you're all familiar with this project. As you know, won't be able to treat all the windows, but we are looking for other possibilities to do the additional work as well. Adam, do you want to say any words on that? Council, do you have any questions?
For now, the 300,000 is anticipated to get about 23 windows of the 54. In reading the report, because they did non-destructive methods to look at it, they had to assume worst case. They assumed certain things on every window needs to be replaced. That may not be the case. Until they get in and actually do it, and until we bid it, we're not exactly sure. That price we think is definitely will do it, but we think it could be done much cheaper.
Or be able to do more windows with the
More than
grant?
just the 23.
Mhm.
But until we get in and actually, some of them might just need new pulleys, some might just need a new track, weights. There is abatement to the windows, asbestos caulking, and I think there's small trace amounts of lead paint too. So, get this and try to maximize the money for it.
So when we say restoration, we're going to restore what we have.
Yes.
And
So
is-
doesn't want replacement.
Is there any storm panels for the inside or anything like that? So it's just to take care of what we have.
And we're gonna do the windows that face the roadway, try to do those first.
Except don't do my window. I don't want mine done first.
Do you really want your window to stand out, Mayor?
Good point.
We'll just blend you in with everybody else. Okay.
Any other questions? We have a request that the mayor is authorized to sign a contract for design services on South Peru Street, Sharon, South Catherine, with Greenman Peterson, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $60,000 to be reimbursed through CHIPS funding.
Yeah, I think we're gonna recommend this one actually get removed from the agenda. We've got some stormwater issues that we're looking into that's gonna affect the cost of design for this one. So we'll get a little bit more time to take a look at this and come back with hopefully a better number.
Okay.
Can I ask, on CHIPS funding, is there a cap on that per year?
We
No.
get a allocation each year. I think it's to the tune of 375. And then there's Pave New York and emergency into the funding as well. Now, I think 75 and 105, but those two I think are newer programs and not guaranteed every year.
But CHIPS
Just
is.
pretty much guaranteed every year.
All right.
It's based on highway mileage that we maintain.
Okay. Thanks.
Request that contract 2017-16 sodium thiosulfide for the water pollution control plant be awarded to Thatcher Company of New York for the lump sum of $69,920. I think this is something we commonly see. Any questions on that? Request the contract 2018-01 liquid alum for the water pollution control plant be awarded to Chemtrade Chemicals US LLC for the amount of $388 dry ton, or $15,803.40 total. Again, relatively routine.
Does that mean a maximum amount of 15,830 or a minimum amount?
I think it's the total amount based on the number of tons that you need currently.
That was, we based it on 40.8 dry tons in the bid, so they bid 388 per dry ton.
Okay, so the amount is a fixed
So
amount.
if they go over, but we have the unit price of $388 per dry ton.
Okay.
And request the contract 2018-03 city court improvements holding cell wall protection be awarded to TNS Builders. The cost will be reimbursed 105% by the New York State court systems. That actually doesn't come directly out of our budget. Questions? Sylvia here? You got no. This is.
So, actually, we had a major project at City Court doing the holding cells, and I went to John Rupp and said, this is kind of outside scope of what I do, could I employ you and Adam? And he said, yes, I would be happy to, and Adam ran with that project, he did an excellent job. City Court couldn't have followed it up, he did communication well with myself, all the members of the unified court system, and the contractor, and after the award, or after the initial part of construction was done, we were doing a walkthrough, and the court happened to mention, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we did this to help protect the walls now that they've been done? timeframe, we have to get it done before the end of March. And we coordinated meetings with people to get them in to take a look. And so this is just the final, last little part of that major project. So really, I don't think there's all the.
So what does this part do exactly? It protects the walls?
Basically, the inmates have a belt that handcuffs them to the front, belt buckles in the back, and when they lean against the walls, it's strapped to it pretty bad. So instead of thin, reinforced fiberboard, similar to restaurants, a thin piece of plastic essentially, they're just glued to the wall, adhere to the wall, and just protect it.
You only got 105% though?
That's part of
It's 100% and 5% for administrative to cover all the stuff that.
There you go. All right.
And the project they've done over there at City Court is actually really well done. I like it.
Good job, Adam. Thank you.
We have 3 more items that we'll need for the council to, if you wish to invoke Rule 4 during the meeting. One is a request for permission to sign a change order number 3 to contract 2016-16 slope stabilization project, Oklahoma Avenue. And as you know, this project's been stretching on a little bit and it's made it a little bit more difficult for the contractor because of increased slope degradation, etc. So this is a way to adjust and make sure that we can get to the completion of this project. Is that summed up okay? Any questions on that? A second is request for permission for mayor to sign change order number 4, contract 2016-16. Same sort of thing. The revised amount for this moves from the current contract amount of $1.438,677 and increased by $13,654 to take into account some of these recent changes. Is that correct?
This brings it to about 52,000 of the approximately 75,000 anticipated for force account work due to delays and degradation to the slope between those delays. So the contractor wants to close out 2017 billing for the work that was conducted, and this is that. We should be expecting another about 23,000 less for the rest of the change force account work.
Any questions? And one more. This is a request to be authorized to apply for a grant from New York State Department of Transportation Pedestrian Action Safety Plan. This is an anticipated grant of up to $1 million to redesign a number of crosswalks and also enhance our ADA compliance. It could require up to a 10% local match, but we're also hopeful that we can get that down to a little 0% local match.
There is a possibility for 100% eligibility for these projects, but it says the municipality should be prepared for the possibility of 0% local.
Okay.
And we've already identified the various crosswalks.
There's one more missing from that I haven't been able to complete, but it's Catherine, North Catherine and Cornelia. Yes. And I'll be looking at tomorrow with the estimates on it. Hopefully applying before 11:59 p.m.
This is to make sure there's proper ramps cut into the sidewalks for wheelchairs?
The ramps are not explicitly covered. So that should dovetail with our ADA transition plan. There's 50,000 this year, 250 for the next 2 years for updating facilities and sidewalks. The ramps would be covered if in our eligible action of the PSAP, we destroyed, disturbed, or changed it in any way, then we would be required to bring it into compliance. We're just putting in a push button on a pole, that curb ramp would not be covered, because we're not disturbing or altering that curb ramp in any way. If we alter it, we're required to bring it into compliance. So if we don't alter it, it's not covered.
So this grant would be just covering?
The push buttons, the striping,
Signal timing.
yeah. New cabinets for the lights, the cost to coordinate between the signal and the lights, traffic study, possible design, survey, right-of-way acquisition if needed.
Also, to bring in new striping, I know there's some intersections throughout the city that have no striping. The one that comes to mind is right near Mickey's. There's that intersection where I don't think you can actually cross the intersection in a crosswalk.
That's one of the intersections.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so we'll be striping that, putting in push buttons, because there's definitely, because it comes from all different directions, like you see people standing there not knowing where traffic comes from. So it's a perfect candidate for push buttons and timing.
Perfect.
You have some sketches somewhere.
Any further questions or concerns you want to ask at this time? What we can then do is move all these forward. You requested to table item number 3, so we can move all the rest forward to the council meeting if you desire. And we would ask for a first. How do we do a first and a second if there's only one person officially here?
Would have to be you.
Yeah, well, I'll certainly first it. I guess just as a gesture of good faith, then we'll just put it to the council meeting tonight. If there's no more remaining
Well, we can have a
questions.
second, just for the lawyer, when it comes to.
Yeah, but who can second if there's only
I'll
3
second.
committee
I
members?
don't know, we can just have
I don't know.
Josh or somebody.
Well, we'll try that. Josh. Thank you, Councillor Kretzer.
No problem.
Roll call?
Mayor Reed,
Present, or, yes, I'm sorry.
Councilor Kretzer.
Yes.
Just goes to show how unused I am to running these committee meetings. Time for old business, or any old business people would like to raise? During new business, in a moment, we can also ask for any other project updates that the department heads would like to bring forward. Any old business? I have one item under new business. Want to talk a little bit about the public hearing we'll have next week on cryptocurrency. But let's begin with any new business or concerns that you all might have, or any other new business.
New business comment?
Please.
Let's talk about the Craig Civic Center. Probably no surprise, it's in pretty tough shape. We spent the last month and a half supplementing the workforce there with public works employees, trying to get it back in shape. The most critical issue that's facing us is the roof. We hired a contractor to come in and patch the roof again. Probably, I know at least once or twice when Steve was here, we had this come. But it's time to take a really hard look at what needs to be done. Reached out to a roofing contractor to get budgetary numbers. We're looking in the neighborhood of removing the old roof and putting a new roof about $550,000 to $600,000. That does not include hazardous material removal, roof drains, pans, leaders. We will get progressively worse. So, moving forward, we probably have to hire a professional, cut some into the roof, assess the actual condition of it, and come forward with a plan to replace it if that's what we're choosing. There will be a time where we will not be able to keep patching. It will not stop.
Were the council to invest that kind of sum into the roof for Craig Center, would you expect that would ally our concerns with the roof for 25 years or so? Would this really do the trick?
Not taking the roof apart and seeing what's actually there. 550 is what we see. That's the roofer was up there looking at the repairs that need to be made. There was a couple of seams that had opened up, and based on the way he looked at that style of roof, if he was just to take it off, assume the best case scenario, put new insulation back down, new membrane, that's what we're looking at. You could have rotten roof deck, you could have roof drain pans that are gone bad, definitely gonna have to look at the roof drains themselves, the leaders, so it's an extensive project. That's where you're gonna have to hire a professional, come in there and do an actual plan and put the docs together. That's item number 1, and obviously most critical. The other item is we have a fire alarm system that's not functioning correctly. To get it up to snuff, you're looking at about $13,000, and that needs to be addressed immediately.
I'd be curious just to see, you know, within the past year, the programming, or maybe even just take last year's programming in the crate to see what is the most lucrative piece of the puzzle as far as revenue. You know, also, you know, thinking about the recreation center and the gym there to see about, you know, basketball programming and or what that court is being used for mostly as far as, you know, any kind of revenue creation and also, you know, services. But I really, you know, before we make any decisions, I'd like to see what it is that is really the most popular and what is potentially making us any kind of money at the Great Center.
I think it's an excellent idea, and I think it dovetails into some of the work you'll need to be doing on the budget pretty soon anyway, seeing where our revenues and exceed the expenses by most and really highlighting those assets. So I think that analysis will be useful in a number of different dimensions.
So I know soccer is very popular, but that's seasonal. You know, there's very few special events that happen there just because of the infrastructure. So I think it's time just to dissect the budget and see what it looks like.
Okay.
And could I also ask, when you look at the roof, you mentioned insulation. Would that be an upgrade of insulation that we would look for because of the heating costs? I mean,
what they're quoting is New York State Energy Code, so they would remove the existing insulation
right.
that has been saturated, and then obviously put in what's required by building code. That's what it said. We can get make some assumptions, at least give us a budgetary number so we can come to you guys and say, listen, this is what we're looking at before we, you know, go out there.
So that would be like minimum insulation? Because we're looking at a building that was really never meant to be heated, are we not?
That is minimum insulation, yes, from the state.
But is that with consideration if it's going on in a building that was never meant to be heated?
I cannot answer that question.
I just wonder if that thought is there, because I think it's the only place there is insulation out there, isn't there? There's no wall insulation, because it was never meant to be heated.
Most buildings like that, including public works buildings, are built in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're a all metal building out in, we're a metal building out on the base.
Right.
We have some masonry that's core filled, but it's this metal panel, some of it's insulation itself. So it's a big box.
But when it was built, heating costs were probably not a consideration.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now it is. Okay.
But on the flip side too, they also insulate those to keep the cold air in the summertime. Ice hockey. So they did have insulation for that purpose.
Is there any other critical problems with the Great Center? Like, we're not going to fund a $600,000 roof and then come back in a couple of years and
You
maybe
gotta
take
take
a
a
whole building
serious,
down?
you gotta take a serious look at the lobby doors.
Yes.
Bathrooms, very dated, a lot of bathrooms that don't function. I know that Mr. Brody's informed me that one of the companies before themselves is very suspect. They did a lot of work over the years on that. Lighting, that may have to be addressed. Signage, parking lot work, exterior lighting, it's extensive. It depends how much you want to do it. You can go on and on. It's just
It's hard for me to hear her, and I don't mean to interrupt. Okay, so also we need to consider the study that was done, as a result of the consultants' work with the water revitalization program. You know, there were many suggestions made about what to do with the Great Center. We need to ask the question of not we're going to be making changes for the long run or for the short run. You know, I mean, investment of $550,000 per roof, whatever else, needs to be a question placed with the context of planning.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Councilor Kretzer was getting to, as well as doing some hard analysis of the viability and the profitability of it. I think we need to start in on that right away.
You think that building has any market value?
I don't know if we're even able to sell it or alienate it, are we?
That was another question we looked to in the past. I don't remember if we had a firm answer, but if it is indeed a park, but certainly New York State has a park right next door, but if it's a city park, which I don't want to be held to it, but I believe the answer was yes, then there's prohibition on alienation of parklands absent a New York State legislator approval, which it is such a large parcel that could be, you know, a potential avenue to at least look at politically at the state level. But in general, the answer is once something is deemed a park, it's always a park.
We'll try to clarify that as well.
So it sounds like, you know, this could cost $1 million to rehab that building. Could you build a building down on the waterfront for $1 million? I guess, you know, Josh is absolutely right. We need to do some sort of assessment of how much that building is being used.
Any further questions on the Great Center? Any other issues or initiatives that you'd like to bring up? I've got one brief little report. As you know, next week we'll be looking at the cryptocurrency issue, and it's obviously very complex, and the public has a lot of concerns, and I'd like to just briefly spend about 10 minutes describing what actually is in the proposed local law, and we do have copies of the local law out in the hallway, perhaps closer to the other side. But do you have that picture you could bring up? First of all, Bitcoins are obviously for the public very confusing things. You can kind of think of the currency as like gold in some sense, and that it's in fixed supply, and because it's in fixed supply, it has a certain value to it. But unlike any other currency, each time there's another transaction of a Bitcoin, it's recorded within the coin itself and has to be encrypted and re-encrypted and adjusted on an ongoing basis, and in a way that prevents somebody from stealing these Bitcoins. So it has to be use an awful lot of mathematics for encryption, and that uses an awful lot of energy. These are Bitcoin machines themselves. They're about the size of a space heater that you might have in your apartment or your bedroom. You know, maybe about less than a cubic foot in size. They cost about $2,000 each. They generate about 98% of the electricity that goes into them comes off as heat, which is about the same amount of electricity you'll generate in a space heater. So this is basically a whole bank of space heaters. They're all plugged in, use up similar amount of power each as a space heater, and they only intermittently really need to go out into the internet. They're kind of milling away. A machine like this might mill away for a year or half a year and spit out a Bitcoin. So it doesn't need to be constantly interacting with the internet. There's no power being fed into this big Bitcoin system. It's just processing power done locally, and then they spit out these Bitcoins. Here you can see in each of those shelves, there's a Bitcoin machine in the front and a Bitcoin machine in the back. So in that picture there of a row that might be about 30 feet long or so, that represents somewhere around 700 or 800 machines. And they consume in that bank there about 1 megawatt of power, which is somewhere around 1% of the entire power of the city, just in that one row there. So if you have 10 rows like this in a typical large room filled with Bitcoins, that can represent about 10 megawatts of power and about 10% of the total annual or total quota that the city has. We have 2 such operations in the city of Plattsburgh right now. And we have a lot of applications of people that would like to come. The moratorium is actually for us to explore the ramifications on heat generation on safety and working in that room, on fire suppression, and we're not actually exploring the energy cost implications, although I can describe them just a little bit to you as well. So think of a bank of, say, 1,000, 10,000 of these items, these units, all in a room. So imagine 10,000 space heaters installed in this room, the kind of heat generation problems that would be created, as well as the burden on our system of representing each room about 10% of our entire energy use or energy quota on a given day. Since these run 24/7, sometimes the city only needs about 40 megawatts of our 100 megawatt allotment. So these could represent 25 or 30% of our entire energy usage in the entire city. One of these units will consume more power than our largest industrial users, the hospital or the university or GP or Moldrite, for instance. Once they're installed, they don't require much maintenance. They require kind of a security guard to make sure no fuses are being blown, kind of figuratively. But there's not a large staff that would have to staff this compared to some of our other large industrial sites that might employ 500, 1,000 people and be using that same amount of power allotment that we offer. There is lucrative right now because primarily Bitcoin is a very expensive currency. I think I last looked a couple days ago, it's trading at about $11,000 per Bitcoin. So these machines will well pay for themselves in the first year of investment. As a matter of fact, and there's different types of cryptocurrencies. For Bitcoin itself, they say that you can install this and have that entire investment, purchasing all these machines, building them out, etc., have that pay for itself within the first 8 months. After that, everything else is profit. For every $1 of power that goes in, they're generating $12 of profit that comes out. So it's highly, highly lucrative, and that's why, because of our very low power costs, that's why entrepreneurs from all around the world are right now looking at Plattsburgh and a couple of other locations with our very favorable power costs as a place to invest. Some of your constituents are concerned because they want us to encourage leading edge innovation and are obviously very much for this kind of thing. Some of your constituents are also concerned because once in a while we do go over the quota. Historically, we haven't gone over the quota much in the last few years. Our winters are getting a little bit warmer, for instance, but there's a concern that we're being pushed over the quota more often now because our average energy usage has increased on this 24/7 kind of basis. When we go over the quota, we'll purchase power on what's called the spot market. It can be 20, 50, potentially 100 times more expensive to purchase power on that kind of emergency basis, because the only time you ever go into the spot market is when your community and all the communities in your area are also experiencing a very hot summer day and everybody's got their air conditioner on, or a very cold winter day and we've got all our resistant heat on. In that case, whatever caused us, for whatever reason, to go over that limit, we now all as ratepayers are sharing in those additional costs. So I think our MLD had estimated that can sometimes add 30 or 40 or more dollars to a bill on one of these days or one of these months where we've gone over the limit. So some of your constituents are concerned for that aspect. But this actual code moratorium, or code change moratorium, doesn't actually address the electrical cost issues. That's going to be something that Bill Tracy's working out with the Public Services Commission. There's a number of other municipalities in his association that have the same concerns as us, so they're taking that en masse to the Public Service Commission with something that we can't locally do much about, the tariff issue, tariff side of things. So we're focusing on the health and safety issues, the fire suppression issues, making sure that when we do approve a new permit of these sorts, that it's done in a way that's keeping everybody safe and healthy and not endangering adjoining properties, etc. Another thing that this hearing is going to address next week, or it doesn't address next week, is small-scale users. There's a provision in this proposal, it only applies to users who use more than 250 kilowatt hours per year per square foot. So that would mean you would have to, in this room here, probably have like 20 of those units in this room before it would ever, the discussion would ever apply. So there are a number of hobbyist Bitcoin users around. I heard of one person who says he heats his apartment using these because they're just like a very expensive space heater. They generate about the same amount of heat with the same amount of efficiency as a space heater. So long as he doesn't have 50 of them in his apartment, again, this doesn't really apply. This is really applying to concentrated kind of server farms Bitcoin operations. As I mentioned, we are somewhat concerned about this. This won't affect the existing operations, but we are concerned that for every 2 that are already in town, there's a dozen waiting on the wings waiting to come. And we want to make sure that if we do approve future permits, then we're doing it in a very safe and well thought out manner. You might say, well, why didn't you think of this sooner? Actually, why didn't every municipality with low energy costs everywhere in the world think of this sooner? It's because this is being thrust upon all our communities so quickly. This phenomenon didn't really even exist to the same scale just a few years ago before these very concentrated devices. These are called application-specific integrated circuit devices. They're just they're only designed to do nothing but Bitcoin, and they really didn't exist like this just a few years ago. So this is something that we're somewhat reluctantly on the leading edge of, unfortunately.
Yeah, what really started this all off is started in probably January of last year, because prior to that, Bitcoin was below $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, it started going up, going up, going up, and that's what's driving the craze, or whatever you want to call it, to put these systems online.
That's right.
And it hit a crescendo in December when it hit around 21,000.
Right.
Now I believe it's around 9,000 to 10,000 today.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible, you see how portable these are? It's not like building out a GP plant or a mold right. If they get cheaper power somewhere else, or if the craze goes away, these things will disappear just as quickly. They're very portable operations. So it's a very nuanced discussion we'll probably be having next week. This is designed to solve a very new set of challenges. We can get some buying time to properly engineer the specs for codes, et cetera, that we will need in this community. And in the meantime, I'm sure your association can be looking for tariff solutions as well to make sure that the other ratepayers aren't essentially subsidizing one ratepayer. So it's very, very complicated. I just figured I'd like to afford you a little bit of time to digest that before it comes up next week. And I encourage you to do all your own independent research, talk to the constituents you're concerned about, and I'm sure we'll have a very good discussion next week. Councilor?
What's in place, say someone comes to town tomorrow and wants a permit to open one, are we in a position to say no?
Well, this attack, or this, since the permit won't be approved all in one day,
Right.
it usually takes a little while to approve. It might be the case that we'll have this moratorium in place before that application is approved, and they won't be able to approve it.
Because certainly any future farmers might sense our resistance. And would they just flood everyone that can offer these rates and see who they can get in before?
That's what we're seeing.
How can we prevent this today? Or can we?
I think we're doing the best we
Yeah,
can
and I
to.
can touch on that briefly, just in a general sense. Any moratorium is a restriction on an ability to do something on a specific piece of property. So there's certainly guidance from the courts to describe how to draft a moratorium, and this was drafted in light of those confines. Part of that, though, is a question of vested rights. When does a right become vested prior to the enactment of a moratorium? And there's a clear set of standards, set forth by the Court of Appeals to describe when someone has sufficiently invested enough money and has received some approval or full approval that their rights are vested. I mean, it's a similar concept in zoning law. So it's a nuanced answer, and it really depends on the facts. but it wouldn't be a scenario where someone could just run in and file a permit application and all of a sudden they're locked in. It really requires that substantial investment before that.
Okay, so.
And even that's a gray area.
So there is some protection
Yeah.
as of today. Okay, well,
And there's also communities advertising that they're looking for them, like Hydro Quebec is looking for them to go up there to buy their power. And it's begging, they want to be the hub up there.
okay.
Mind you, the Hydro-Quebec, I think, just passed a separate tariff to charge one. They can do that easier. Hydro-Quebec is owned by the government in that case, so they can move much more quickly than we may be able to.
One of the other limiting factors we got here is spare capacity. We don't have any more of that. So if somebody calls up and says, and I've gotten calls, people demanding 50 megawatts of power. There's no way I can provide 50 megawatts of power unless they're willing to cough up $15, $20 million to build new substations and bring in new transmission lines.
Okay.
Those large quantities just don't exist, and I've gotten a lot of calls. In fact, one of my other municipalities near here got a call. Somebody called up and asked for 5 gigawatts of power. 5 gigawatts of power, as he told him, he laughed him off the phone because 5 gigawatts is about 1/8 of what the entire state of New York uses on a given day. There's no way he's going to get 5 gigawatts from anybody.
Wow. Okay.
But what they know is they need a large amount of power because they're in an arms race to who can get to that 21 millionth coin.
Okay.
And that's what the rush is right now.
So we have the health and safety coming up that we're going to cover, but you've got it covered on consumption, or it's not available for
Our
consumption.
association lawyers are dealing with the Public Service Commission and they're reviewing a proposal right now. They'll either agree with it, disagree with it, or modify it. We should know probably towards the end of the month an idea where they're going.
Okay.
So do your research, ask any questions, speak to your constituents, and we'll, I'm sure, hear a lot more about this. Joe had mentioned, and I've been deluged with people calling from, the CBC and New York, and as you know, there's a New York Times article featuring Plattsburgh recently on this. This is something that that obviously a lot of people are watching very, very closely, how we navigate this. One of the people we're one of those canaries in the coal mine on this one. Any other issues under new business? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
May I read?
Yes?
Counselor Carpenter.
And roll call.
May I read?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer.
Yes.
This time we'll begin a work session for the Common Council. This is an opportunity for us to have a little bit of an extended discussion on anything in the agenda. And I can offer you an executive session if you like, an update on the issue of the City of Plattsburgh and the PCRA retirement negotiations.
I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session for that purpose, Mayor.
Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor McFarland. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. It should be relatively brief.
I'm thinking next week is next week.
That's making the power.
We'll see. We'll have to cross-check, want to cross-check the figures.
Well, the next story is I'm expecting that Sunday night, so.
This number.
The next story is Sunday night. Yeah.
So that's what we'll.
Just be happy.
That package Yes, we'll see that, yes. That stack that comes in, that's where all that's coming from.
There's nothing that like money. Everything up here.
It's fun to catch Richard in the stage. It doesn't happen very often. I don't know if it's ever happened.
1 inch.
Whatever, what you
Yeah.
So this is back up for
Is your copy?
Yeah, this is.
How many copies?
Well, no, you know, check everything. But they're hollering loudly. That is the fire department. I don't know.
Lots of fires, a little fires today there. Not really fires, I guess. Per se.
He's been roasting marshmallows.
I could go for s'mores. Yeah.
Uh-oh, s'mores. She wants the chocolate portion. Forget the marshmallows.
The what? Next time if you try a marshmallow or piece of peanut butter cup and then you're gonna try it. Oh, that's amazing. Because it melts in the marshmallow and it makes it all, yeah. I'm not a fan of the app. Oreos have cheese. If I were Oreo, I would not have cheese. Your wife tell you that she emailed me to verify the number of team members that could be on a Paris team. Makes me feel happy that she's already thinking about it. I know. I will once I get through.
I have a suggestion for you.
You can come here and stand. There's people that live on the accident and
Wrecking ball. Well, no, actually, I saw what you made. They're working out this
Yeah. You have those too?
They're only 7 years old.
One of my friends gave a beer.
I thought you might be surprised.
You don't drink beer.
Well, you can chop the building in half, put that elevation down. On the roof? Last time I was on that roof, it was about 8 years. But when it was a bigger mess back then, it was more outside the building than it was inside the building.
That's insane. I also heard about the writing on the wall. No, somebody around the street.
I would think
So probably that way. No, saying the actual. Just take it all. Bring over here. Story, repository, the city of Plattsburgh is going to be in baseball. So you think that
without having to test.
So if you're not getting anything,
Oh, I love that.
Someone's doctor.
Like, you know that well, whenever you get that, you definitely get that. For sure. How are you? What? Joe, Mama, you're ready to call
What's your 5 or 6? Nobody ever asked me.
I will do that tomorrow. Thank you. He wants to give me, okay. I appreciate it. My extra bit of everything. Right, yeah.
Those cab overs like that.
Thank you. I'll do it tomorrow.
the whole thing is to be
I know, right? We're in like the north, we're like north, yeah, like you're past, like above us.
Depends how we work
It's like that.
We've got.
I love the first guy, the permits are being Portland area, they kind of like weird, yeah. Everyone just like loves it, like how you get
It's unsustainable the way to go.
Be respectful about his client. She's living his life and he's Try, yeah. That's always the first thing I was I see videos of her on Instagram carrying around the head is
That's why she's getting the trying to get it. Or Italy.
Real about your wife together, you guys are like Yes. How long have you been married? A long time. How long have you been married? No? They met when they were like 2. Oh, you do? Wow. Yeah, don't everybody says me. Just me.
Somebody has to take it.
Oh, it's like half out of it. Right now. Right? Okay. They're not, they're here. Awesome.
Oh, yeah. That one step.
Are you an offer? Man, I wish I didn't have security. Well, I have a really important meeting. Called Founders Imperial Stout. Founders Imperial Stout. Our house bistro. Sandra. Can they hear me? Yeah, live. What? Don't miss a moment.
Oh, yeah, I will.
You'll be right with you.
I'll look at it. While I. No, I didn't. I made battery. I figured that out.
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to get trouble this year. How do you think of that? I pulled charge after a while. It actually did stop. Somewhere I wanted to leave.
That was totally her. I cannot say it.
That was my, I don't know if that's a big, how much does common council videos over that?
Well, I don't think they can hear. They hear her. She said I was going to announce that she said that word, so that everybody can hear what we need.
You keep those videos interesting, maybe it's
That's probably what
I
think that's what happened.
So long. There it is. Never just like
Guys up there.
What's my total
my older sister is, my youngest sister is. I know, right? My younger sister, my sister up front. That one day, that one girl, but they, my brother, my brother, and my sister. Yeah, he's trying to have a right now. Because he works all the time. All those hours a day. And you know what? Not even an hour. He doesn't. Really good. Hours turned into 5 hours. The automation process is
Thank you.
I like it.
I apologize for the delay. We're returning from an executive session. We dealt with our litigation, ongoing litigation with the Plattsburgh City Retirees Association. I updated the council on our progress with regard to the Falcon Seaboard, and we discussed a personnel issue involving an individual person. Let me begin with the council meeting pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Dowdle?
Here.
Councilor Ensel? Councilor McFarland?
Present.
Councilor Spencer?
Here.
Welcome, everybody. Beautiful snowy day in Plattsburgh. Don't forget to move your clocks forward Saturday night. This is the beginning of spring. One thing that I've observed in our community in the last week or so has been very disturbing. There's been more posters portraying hate messages. This is really sad for our community. We all know our community is an open and embracing place to live and welcomes people from everywhere in the world. In the weekend after next, Sandra Geddes is going to be running our Irish Festival, which is designed to celebrate all the Irish Americans that came back in the 1850s, and we're so... Is it this weekend? It's this weekend, I'm sorry. St. Patty's Day is next, the following Saturday, that's right. Okay, and we're so persecuted when they arrived, and now we see what the diversity they brought to our land and all the contributions they make. Every single one of our residents makes contributions. Every one of them is welcome. We consider ourselves a caring community, and to see some of the tone of the public debate and some of the anonymous posters going up, etc., doesn't reflect our value at all. There was an incident apparently right on City Hall back in February with people holding up banners of messages that don't at all reflect our values. Now, we also respect that there is a fundamental right to free speech, and we hope people can do that in a courteous and respectful manner. We're going to have our differences of opinion, obviously, but there's no reason for us to ever be disrespectful. And I just want to affirm something that our Detective Lieutenant Ritter said in an email that he provided to the press, and that we are a respectful community. We do protect the First Amendment, obviously, but there's no room for that kind of hate speech. So I hope that you all can bring that to your communities, that this isn't a Plattsburgh value, and it's very discouraging to see that here as well. On another note, next week, do watch for the hearing that we're going to have on cryptocurrencies. Obviously, this is a very big issue that's facing other communities like ours around the world, in Iceland, in Quebec, in China, right here in Plattsburgh. And we're inadvertently being thrust into an international debate on the role of Bitcoin. I don't think that was our intention when we asked our legal counsel to pen a little potential local law, but we are in some sense leading some of the discussion internationally on how we can roll out this very innovative technology, but in a very safe manner that also protects our residents and our ratepayers for that matter as well. So please do be following that. I know that the press is writing an awful lot about it, both here and elsewhere. We've been having interviews with CBC Radio and the New York Times and stuff, and this is something that the entire nation seems to be watching, because this is an issue that doesn't apply just to us, but we're certainly feeling some of the ramifications of it maybe earlier than some others. And that's all I have for my comments.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on March 1st, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public record to the City Clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Kelly and second by Councillor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the City of Plattsburgh for the week ending March 7th, 2018 in the amount of $98,375.44 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the part of our meeting where I ask for any reports or updates from our various committee chairs. I'd like to begin with governance strategy and city operations. Councilor Kretzer, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd love to welcome Matthew Miller into the fold. He was appointed last week as Community Development Director, so hopefully first week has been going well and been able to kind of absorb a little bit and call on any of our friends and neighbors to help along the way. If you need anything at all, let us know. Also, Councilor Armstrong and I have been working, we've set a meeting with owners of the local taxi and livery companies for this coming Monday. We'll be meeting with them to discuss their concerns regarding fares for taxi and livery within the city. And just kind of hear their concerns, hear processes, look at other municipalities and try to figure out if our rates are where they need to be, if they need to be adjusted, but including them in the process because it's their business. So we'll be meeting with them on Monday. And then let's see what else. Plattsburgh Farmers and Crafters Market. Councilor Armstrong and I have been working along with other councilors, communicating with the management of the Plattsburgh Farmers and Crafters Market. They have a member meeting, I believe, on the 22nd. So I would request that we not move the item 7 on the resolution, leave it on the table until after they've had their meeting and they've been able to report back with indications of how they feel about the proposals and the possibilities that we suggested in the last meeting. And we're also continue to look at different options for different types of strategic planning software municipalities use to help streamline their strategic planning process. So we still are looking at different possibilities for that software, and we'll report back. Councilor Armstrong, have I forgotten anything?
I don't think so. Software direct a communication from Dick Crawford. Did you read that?
I just mentioned that they were going to be having their meeting on the 22nd.
Okay.
And that they were, going to kind of discuss the things that we suggested with their membership and then report back to us.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you. Anything else?
Pretty much it.
Thank you. I'll represent in Councilor Ensel's stead infrastructure. We just met earlier today. We'll of course be meeting the same time next month. By the way, tomorrow at our regular 10 a.m. open meeting for employees and staff, this week is infrastructure. So anybody involved with infrastructure, please invite your employees to come and discuss issues at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You'll see a number of items on the agenda tonight that the committee is asked to put forward. Items B, C, we're going to recommend tabling D, consider E, F, and then also 3 new resolutions for initial consideration, essentially invoking Rule 4 and approving tonight as well. And I also gave a little bit of a synopsis of what Bitcoin is and what a Bitcoin farm looks like, etc., as part of the meeting as well. That's all I have to report. Let's move on to finance and budget. Councilor Kelly, please.
Okay, next week we will have our finance and budget committee meeting at 4:30 p.m. prior to our regular work session. This is the first time that I've ever run this meeting without the help and assistance of Richard Marks, so I'm a little nervous about it. He does such a wonderful job that, but he has armed me with all the tools I need, I think, to give a pretty good report. And we're very, very close to having our final numbers for 2017, so you'll get to see what your efforts did for last year. One of the things we'll also look at is the council's, I guess we're calling it a 10-year plan now, because we've expanded it a little bit. And Mr. Marks updated that with our latest figures today, and I think that's pretty close to what the year-end numbers are going to be like. So I'm going to ask Mayor Reed to meet with me early next week and discuss some of the anticipated expenses that we should be budgeting for going forward. So give us a more complete picture of our expenses. We have found that doing that exercise of anticipating expenses before they happen has been really useful, so we want to continue that practice.
Thank you. Thank you. Public safety, Councilor Dowdell?
I have no updates. We had our meeting 2 weeks ago, and we'll have our meeting the last Thursday of the month as scheduled, and for topics to be determined.
Thank you. Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Armstrong?
No update.
Okay, and MLD Board President, Councilor Ensel's away. I will note that Councilor Ensel is asking to step in the role of the infrastructure chair, and that would then, I'd then like to ask Councilor McFarland to step in as the role for the chairman of the MLD. Given the quorum issue today, are we allowed to operate all these committees as a committee of the whole and have all members voting on these for the various committees?
Yeah, we could bring them on right now.
Okay. I think we have been functioning loosely in that way anyway, and all the councils have been attending all the committee meetings, even if they're not one of the assigned councils. But if you'd all would be willing to continue to do that, I think that your contributions are really valuable. So resolve that the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Kretzer and seconded by Councilor Dowdell. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? As there's no correspondences at this time. Audit of claims.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending March 9th, 2018 in the amount of $760,449.38 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer and seconded by Councilor Dowdell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed. This is the part of the agenda where we ask individuals to please come address the council on any issues on the agenda tonight. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting for more general concerns. But any issues on the agenda tonight, please come forward. Please.
Andrew Gold here. Regarding the Bitcoin usage, the meeting was not going to be, there wasn't going to be discussion at tonight's meeting. That's going to be next.
Correct. That'll be on the agenda next week. When you do a local law change, we have to have at least 7 days between the announcement of the hearing and the actual hearing. And since once we start a council meeting, 7 days is just a little bit past it. We have to actually go to 14 days. So they're always a 2-week delay.
Could it be discussed just briefly so people are brought up to it?
Not at this time, but at the end
Not
of the meeting,
officially.
if you
It
can
can't be
do some
discussed
address.
officially, just in case people haven't read in the paper what's happening. I think it's
In the second comment period.
The second, we can do it
Because it's not on the
tonight, but.
agenda.
I see.
Right,
Okay.
yep.
And I also ask you to consult the recording of the evening. A presentation about 10 minutes long was offered around 5:15. So if you go back to that recording,
Oh, I
you'll
missed
see it
that.
there.
It's on YouTube.
Never heard of it.
Any other individuals like to come and address the council, please?
You're better.
Sheriff, if I heard right, are you going to be addressing item D?
No, that is going to be tabled at this time. We're going to bring it up at a future meeting. Any other issues on the agenda that the individuals of the public would like to address? Seeing none, we continue.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Moved by
Unless you want to put it.
No. No motions to remove 7A from the table? For lack of motions, they'll stay on the table?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council authorizes the mayor to sign a license agreement with Pine Harbor Inc. to enter City of Plattsburgh property
I'd
located
like to
on
make a
Ohio
motion to
Avenue.
waive the reading and move the resolution.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Dowdell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the resolution itself? This was discussed extensively in the committee beforehand. Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdell?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved.
I need to be excused from the meeting. Pardon me.
Thanks, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Armstrong had a previous commitment that she had to attend to.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign grant disbursement agreement between Dormitory Authority, State of New York, and the City of Plattsburgh for a grant of $300,000 for the restoration of the windows in historic City Hall building.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong is not here.
Thank you.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign a contract for design services on South Brew Street, Sharon, South Catherine, with Freeman Peterson Inc., GPI, in an amount not to exceed $60,000 to be reimbursed through CHIPS funding.
The committee has asked for this to be withdrawn at this. Do you still wish for it to not be considered tonight? So no first or second? Continue then?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the contract number 2017-16 sodium thiosulfate for the water pollution control plant be awarded to Thatcher Company of New York for the lump sum of $69,920.
Moved by Councilor Dowdle and second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the contract number 2018-01, liquid alum for the water pollution control plant be awarded to Chemtrade Chemicals US LLC for the amount of $388 per dry ton, or $15,830.40 total.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves continuing the contract with Elmore SPCA for animal shelter services for 2018 for the total annual cost of $10,868. The total cost remains the same as 2017.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion?
Just for clarification, this is just for cats and skunk?
No, animal shelter.
Oh.
For animal shelter,
Okay.
not animal control.
Right, and I think they only deal with cats, I believe.
Counselor, it's dogs.
Oh, it is dogs. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I know, cats. All right.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves contract number 2018-03 City Court Improvements Holding Cell Wall Protection be awarded to TNS Builders. The cost will be reimbursed 105% by the New York State Court System.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Dowdle. Kind of waving your hand there.
I am.
Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
No travel requests at this time. The committee did discuss 3 potential resolutions for initial consideration. One was to authorize me to apply to the New York State Department of Transportation Pedestrian Action Safety Plan for a grant that offers up to $1 million for redesign of crosswalks and ensure a better ADA compliance. We're hoping to have this 100% funded, but it may amount to as much as a 10% local share. Applying for the grant doesn't necessarily, though, commit us to that at this time. We'll keep you updated. If you'd like to consider that and like to move it forward, would I have a motion to invoke Rule 4? And
Did you have the 2 others?
I have 2 others as well.
Can we move them all together and implement?
Okay.
Do all 3 together?
The second is permission for me to sign a change order number 3 to contract 2016-16 slope stabilization project, Oklahoma Avenue. And the second is request for permission for mayor to sign contract change order number 4 to contract 2016-16 slope stabilization project, Oklahoma Avenue. The second results in an increase in costs of approximately $13,654.27 as from what was described before, related to delays in the project and further slope erosion and some of the complications for the contractor arising from that. So can we invoke all three under Rule 4 and consider?
So moved.
By Councillor Kretzer, second by Councillor Kelly. Approval of invoking Rule 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And discussion on the items themselves? This again was discussed extensively in the committee meeting just before this meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to move all three.
Moved by Councillor Kretzer and second by Councillor Kelly. Any further discussion?
I will say, especially for the $1 million, the design for crosswalks and bringing those up to standards, I think that one is definitely should be sought after by the city. And a lot is coming through. We talked about it more in the infrastructure committee. But
thank you. Roll call.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councillor McFarland?
Yes.
Councillor Kretzer?
Yes.
Are there any other items for initial consideration or new business or council reports at this time? If the visitors wonder why we don't have these council reports, there's a lot to do with the fact we have extensive committee meetings before the meeting. We also have our various committee meeting reports at the beginning of this meeting as well. At this time then, are there any public comments from individuals who would like to address the council of any issue of mutual concern? Hello.
I have a question before I get to my real rant. First question is, if we do the ADA compliance, one of our problems, even with our sidewalks that are nicely, I would assume if I was in a wheelchair I could access them, it looks like they're, it'd be easy, so we don't shovel all of our sidewalks. Like, I walk to work and it's really hard on most corners, even well after the plows go by, to actually access the corners without feeling like you're scaling a mountain. So I don't know if that's included into the conversation of that. That's just here or there. So my name's Kimberly Cummins. I've lived in the city for like 10 years. I know most of you, I used to work with reality checks, so I'm kind of a little familiar with this stuff. And this is really about those posters, and really thank you, Colin, for speaking out both online and here. I think it's important that we as a city take a stand against this. And I'm not coming here to really make you, you can't change someone else's ideas just by being a city council. I know that's not something I can even ask you to do, but I do have a sense of fear with a lot of the gun violence, and I don't want this to turn into yay or nay for or against guns, as much as I took the initial photo when I saw the posters. I decided to do some research before taking any action. I read their manifesto, and if you haven't read it, please do. And the reason I bring up the gun violence is because they're really advocating for violent takeovers. A lot of the rhetoric is more about how this country was founded over the nature of domination, and we took what's ours and this is ours and we're taking it back, and that kind of rhetoric really scares me after the series of gun violence in the United States. And I think whatever resources beyond just reporting posters and other things, which I think it's great to keep account of where this is showing up, and especially that it's showing up around our middle schools. And I'm not sure, I'm still trying to figure out if they've put anything around the high school, but this kind of recruitment behavior of young impressionable people. I know with working with Reality Check, my whole thing was talking about the tobacco industry and how they strategically target young people to become people who start smoking, and seeing some of the behaviors that, that these people are taking. It's like these people are young, impressionable kids, and they're targeting them, and they're targeting them with a very violent message. And doing some research, finding out that other cities across the United States, people are dying from people with the different beliefs. And I'm not to say that these people are demons or monsters and all these people are prone to violence, but the fact of the matter is that their message itself had a lot of violent rhetoric. And I guess my other point is just using this as a place to speak in front of my city and share some beliefs of, I just feel like we're really devolving into a lack of conversation. I know there's a lot happening around the DRI and other conversations where we're not talking anymore. We're just yelling endlessly at each other. Whether or not I believe in one side or another, I'm just seeing that both sides, even if you believe the same things, we're not even talking. Like, if you don't get every nuance correct, if you don't say exactly what else someone else wants you to say, you're a monster, you don't believe the same things, and we just devolve into this argument. And I would really like to call to action that people, that we kind of go away from the internet, just get off the internet and like go talk to people, look them in the eye, have real conversations. I spent the last few days on the corner of North Catherine and Broad, just trying to, just a universal message. I didn't really want to, I don't want to get into politics. I think it's so nuanced on what you believe and how you believe it. And I can't change someone's conversation there, but I think if we can really get under the fact that we are all people, that we all want safety, we want happiness, we want to be able to follow our dreams, and if we can trust each other and, you know, want to move this city forward, like Plattsburgh is a beautiful place, and I know all of you are working really hard, putting in time here at the Common Council, and I know a lot of people in this audience do the same, that we can make the city better, and it's not about if you're a Republican or Democrat or black or white or gay or straight or whatever way you want to slice that. Like, I think there's a lot of really good things that could come out of it. And in my years of doing the zombie walk and roller derby and this and that and all these other things, like, I've really met a lot of beautiful and wonderful people in this city, and I hope we can move forward and, you know, do all that stuff. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for, you know, addressing this issue. But I hope that we can make sure we're using whatever resources to keep an eye on this because of the directly violent nature of the mission statement of the organization that put up flyers in our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Yeah, I'll talk to that. Speaks well.
That's kind of hard to follow, but any other individuals like to come up and address the council?
It really makes us think.
I just wanted to say something. I'd like to get up and talk, so I'm going to follow on. Kimberly?
Hi.
I'm going to follow up on your lead. I'm Jewish, and I maintain a close connection with the Chabad of Plattsburgh, Rabbi Abraham Rimler. And there was some anti-Semitic notes in that pamphlet. It's just, I suppose it's just something printed off the internet, because Jews are kind of really blend in easily, like the invisible minority that we are. But it makes you wonder. I've never experienced anti-Semitism in any of my time in this area. People may have been thinking about it, but I've never heard or seen a word of it personally. These things that were distributed, I haven't seen them, but I read about them in the paper, and I appreciate the Press Republic publishing items like this. Unfortunately, it makes you think bad things, and Kimberly's speaking was very, very enlightening, that there are impressionable kids looking for something to follow, a friend, a so-called friend that may be introducing them. And we've all heard on the news about these resource officers, the kitty cop. These people that are in charge of the police department, their superiors, need to be very well aware that these kids are very impressionable, and what they're doing on the computer when you're not looking, you can't keep track. I don't have any kids, unfortunately. But kids are looking at things, and if they see something like this, they'll type it in, and all of a sudden they've got a friend that's responding immediately, and that's exactly why they're responding. So I'm very happy that you brought that up. I never would have thought that this was running so deep, but it seems that it is. Whether it's anti-Semitic or anti-this or anti-that, there's an agenda. These people have an agenda. And, with all this prevalence of security cameras, maybe somebody will pick out someone throwing one of these flyers down, and we'll get to meet who this person is, whether it's a good introduction or in handcuffs. There's a First Amendment free speech. They can say whatever they want, but when does it cross the line to hate speech? And even if it doesn't, we need to know who these people are. If someone ever sees someone hanging up a poster and take a picture, it could be innocent. It's usually the innocent people that get caught stapling things or taping things to poles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Run.
Hello, kind of piggyback with what Kim said. I saw her post, and that's what made me go out and decide to go take some of them down. Something that the city council can address, though, as it pertains to this, is how we've used our North Country values of rebellion against an invading force. We have a Battle of Plattsburgh reenactment. How, and a lot of our other North Country values kind of perpetuate these neo-Nazis. And I'm not saying that we have to necessarily get rid of what we hold as tradition, but we do have to repackage them and rethink them in ways that really show how we flourish with inclusivity. So that is definitely something that I put onto our common council, the people that we have elected to represent us. There is a way that we can go about this without saying, oh, well, free speech this, free speech that. There are steps that we can take, and it does involve looking into the mirror and seeing these sort of ways that we have allowed for this type of hateful rhetoric to manifest itself in our own community.
Thank you.
Any other individuals like to come up at this time? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Dowdle, second by Councilor Kretzer. Roll call.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Dowdle?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Fletcher?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, sir.
Did you get a stone in there? Did they make you?
No, I work at home.
Okay. Yeah. Good.